be talking about a legend of modern hypnosis, Dave Elman. Widely known and respected worldwide, Elman published only one book in his lifetime, but that one book had such an enormous impact on the profession that many people today consider him to be the greatest hypnotist of all time. Dave Elman taught approximately 10,000 physicians and dentists, more than any other teacher before or since. And today we're excited to have the opportunity to talk directly to his son, who has resurrected the Dave Elman Institute of Hypnosis in order to carry on his father's work. And Larry Elman and his wife Cheryl, also joining us today, each have very distinguished careers of their own in hypnosis.
Larry Elman boasts of graduating from his father Dave Elman's course in medical hypnosis not once, but 3 times as a teenager, studying alongside doctors and dentists, and of a brief career as a stage hypnotist while in high school and college. He then went on to engineering career at MIT, the Air Force, and the defense industry, eventually retiring as Colonel of the U.S. Air Force. For many years, Larry has answered inquiries about his father's life and Dave Elman course in medical hypnosis. He now lectures and writes on several subjects and is sought after as a teacher of his father's methods of hypnosis. In addition to being a certified consulting hypnotist and a certified hypnotic instructor, Larry has impressive educational accomplishments, which include a bachelor's degree from MIT in aeronautical engineering and a master's in aerospace engineering and in theoretical and applied mechanics from the University of Oklahoma. Larry has also served as MIT educational counselor in 9 counties in North Carolina. Welcome, Larry. We're honored to have you on our show today.
Hi, Lynn. Hi, Jim. It's good to be here.
Hi. Oh, we're really excited that you're here. And Cheryl Elman is joining us today, too. Cheryl has spent over 30 years teaching art, special education, and business training. She taught high school, special ed, and has tutored and supervised tutoring programs in the schools for Sylvan tutoring programs. And Cheryl's also a certified consulting hypnotist with the National Guild of Hypnotists and brings to her hypnotherapy practice what I see to be a very rich tapestry of experience in education, psychology, and creative arts, as well as an expertise in sales, marketing, and business practice. One of her passions is encouraging expression and creativity through the visual arts. Cheryl, we want to really welcome you to the show, too, and thank you for being with us today. You know, when we were studying to become certified hypnotists, we were told when we saw a wide array of materials that we could purchase that if you buy nothing else, you purchase Dave Elman's book, Hypnotherapy. We were told it's the Bible to hypnotists everywhere.
Larry, you have a famous dad, as I said, a hero to the profession.
Well, growing up with Dad, since I didn't grow up with any other father, is one where I don't have a good comparison. But before he started teaching hypnotism, he was rather famous on radio and TV. So dealing with his fame is something I guess I've been doing since about 2 years old. We trace back to his vaudeville development of his techniques, but in order to have a job as a hypnotist in vaudeville, you had to know a little bit about it before you got there. And we are this year celebrating the centennial of the Dave Elman induction. In about 1906, my grandfather was fooling around with hypnosis and got to know a bit about it. I wouldn't call him an accomplished hypnotist. In 1908, it was obvious he was dying from a very painful form of cancer. And a hypnotist was brought in who gave him some pain control, and I believe taught him self-hypnosis. I think that, but the records are not totally clear because I don't think the people, my various relatives describing it and marking it down, would have known the details. At any rate, my grandfather felt well enough the next day, even though he'd been terribly ill, so he went off on a business trip, died on the business trip. And the result is that my father's last memory of my grandfather was him dying of cancer and having hypnosis totally remove the pain. So Dad was hung up on that fact for the rest of his life. And he talked his siblings out of splitting up my grandfather's hypnosis library, and that became the start of my father's hypnosis library. He then began practicing on his classmates in school. By this time, he was in June. Well, as I say, Grandpa died when Dad was 8, but by the time he finished reading the books and whatever, he was about 12 when he started practicing on his classmates in junior high. So that's why we date the start of the Dave Elman induction from 1912. He did that for about 3 or 4 years, and then went off to vaudeville, where he perfected the technique and got pretty good with it.
Oh, well, I think looking at your father's history, that was such a significant thing to be able to see that happen for your grandfather. And then I know he was involved in vaudeville and entertaining. I heard he was a musician. He did all these wonderful things. Tell the audience how the Dave Elman course in medical hypnosis came about. I know doctors and dentists came and asked him to teach them, and that was a really significant thing in those days. Hypnosis didn't have the credibility that it does now. Tell us more about that.
Well, after Hobby Lobby went off the air, about, I don't know, a few months after that, my father was arranging for some celebrities to do a charity show, and a number of them couldn't make it, and he had to fill the time slots. So he therefore just trotted out his old vaudeville act and did that to fill the time slots. And shortly after that show, he was approached by a number of doctors, half a dozen or so, all of whom had taken hypnosis courses but been unable to use them in their practice. And they said, "Now, we've seen it works. Would you teach us?" And Dad was kind of surprised by this until they came back as an official committee of the local chapter of the Medical Society and asked, would he teach backed by the Medical Society? And so his first several courses were given under the auspices of that chapter. When the National Medical Societies found this out, the chapter was disciplined for such heresy, and Dad never referred to this after that. He just went on teaching and ignored the problem.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. We wanted to ask you these questions to help people understand where your dad came from. We're going to be going back and forth between the historical information and the stories you have to tell about your dad, and the way you and Cheryl are using his techniques yourself in your own practice today, and how that's impacted your own careers in hypnosis. So Cheryl, we haven't forgotten about you. We're going to be talking to you first after the break. This is just great. Really, it's so exciting. I mean, Dave Elman he produced, for the audience, when we come back and when we're talking more about him, Dave Elman produced inductions that help people to go into hypnosis almost instantly, allowing us to have more time to do the actual work that we want to do with clients to help them reach their goals. It's just amazing.
Yes.
You know, you have some really special talents. You bring all of those things that I mentioned before, your educational background, your interest in the visual arts, your own creativity. How does your exposure to being in the Elman family and their techniques and history impact the work that you do today? How does it help you? How do you use it in your practice?
I think it's a culmination of everything, and that's what I liked about this. As I've built my different careers, it seems that I always use parts of what I've learned in the last career. And so it's been such a blend. Using my artistic, I am an artist, and using some of my artistic ability and my creativity has really helped me in our promotional materials, in our website, but also within my own sessions with clients. it just coming up with analogies, coming up with my own quote unquote scripts, because I don't use a book of scripts. I do look at scripts to get ideas of different ways people have helped that particular type of thing that you're trying to work with within the session. But I don't sit there and read them. I will take those ideas, and then what comes out after building rapport with a client, what comes out of the session, what comes out throughout the session, gets all it all gets entwined into creating your own script or creating your own path to go with the methods that you're using. And I think that's one of the things, even though Dave Elman induction is sold so much as just a bunch of words, it in fact is not. And I'm sure Larry will talk about that a little bit more. But using his methods and using his ideas of working with the client on a more individual basis and going where that client needs to go will help you get to your initial sensitizing event, using pinpoint methods and going back and using different types of regression will also help to get to the seed of what it is that has them going in the direction they're going, whether it be smoking, eating, fibromyalgia, different things that could be going on with them that you're trying to work with them with hypnosis.
The thing that made my father's course take off was that he looked at what was going on in a doctor's office. I'm now talking a general practitioner or family medicine doctor of the 1950s, 1940s. In that period, probably still today, but definitely in that period, this doctor would see, say, 4 or 5 patients an hour. That means he was spending approximately 12 minutes with a patient. A 20-minute induction is not going to be used. So he needed an induction that was under 2 minutes. Maybe you could talk him into a 3-minute induction, but anything longer than that was ridiculous from his point of view. He needed to make sure that if he used it, it worked 100%. He couldn't afford to waste that time on somebody and have it not work. And then any suggestion he gave was like giving a prescription as far as he was concerned. Just as the pill was expected to work, the hypnosis was expected to work. So he basically had the identical requirements. So when Dad recognized that these were the identical requirements, he just hit on that in his description of what he was teaching and made sure that the doctors understood that connection when they came in. And if they did, they were very interested in taking the stage methods and converting them to a medical office. And that's basically why that course expanded so rapidly. What was taught to the general practitioner in the 1950s is applicable to the hypnotherapist today. Now, if you're billing a client for a 1-hour session, you can afford more than 3 minutes on the induction, but why should you? If you, by doing a rapid induction, say a minute or two, subconsciously that client immediately says, wow, this guy's professional. Anything he does to me is going to work. You just achieved credibility. So because of the credibility, everything you do from there on is going to be better. You're better doing more on the therapy during the time you've got, because that becomes an advertisement and keeps your office full. So a 2-minute induction, by giving you credibility and getting the suggestions to work better, is your best advertisement. As he went along, he would encourage the doctors to come back in with things that they found that was better. He gave a lecture during one of his classes about curing headaches. And one of the doctors starts talking to the patient about, and your sinuses will clear, your sinuses will clear. And my father watches the man practice. He gets done. Dad pulls him aside and says, why did you say that? And the man said, I'm an allergist. Most headaches that I see start with stuffed sinuses. Of course, this was immediately, once you've said it, it's clear. So immediately the question came, can you, by hypnosis, control the secretion of sinus mucus? And the answer was yes. So immediately, bingo, another item is added to the course. Well, by the time you've taught for a couple of years, you have dozens of things like this added to the course. Pain-free childbirth, major surgery, the first open heart surgery ever done anywhere in the world with no chemical anesthetic was done by my father's students with Dad in the operating room.
But he was awake through the whole thing, and he was pain-free?
He was pain-free. I don't know that I would use the word awake. He was in hypnosis. His eyes were closed, but he was using no other chemical anesthesia, whatever. And the reason for this was that this particular patient was so sick, the cardiologist had said, if we don't do open heart surgery on him within about 3 or 4 days, he will be dead. And they called my father. As I said, they were both students of his, and said, has anybody ever done this before? And Dad said, not to my knowledge. And they said, would you mind being in the OR as our hypnosis coach? We're going to try it. If it works, fine. If it doesn't work, well, this guy was far enough gone, so we didn't have a choice. And after that, by golly, that goes into the course. That's another thing we teach. And by the time you get through several years of teaching, you've got a very broad course, but you are still encouraging the doctors that if they find something, bring it in and share it with your colleagues.
I'm going to break in here. We have a caller, Debbie.
Hi, Debbie.
It's Debbie
Hello.
Boucher. How's everybody doing? This is a great show. I wanted to comment on what Larry had spoken about, and you guys are sort of talking about it, but it's so important. Larry, when you were saying how your dad was a smoker, so he wasn't really projecting that confidence onto the other people that they could quit smoking, that's one of the important things that as hypnotists, I think we all need to really remember when we're working with our client is we're maintaining that space for healing and transformation to happen for them. So if we're holding in our mind, oh gosh, I'm not really sure if this is going to work, then we can be projecting onto them, oh my gosh, maybe I won't be successful. All the positive thoughts that we keep in mind for our clients is so important, and you just kind of talked on that, and I just wanted to really mention that again, that's so important.
I'm so glad you emphasized that, because that was exactly the moral of the story as far as I'm concerned. Thus, it's so important that the hypnotist establish rapport with the client and also project professionalism, project that you really believe what you're doing.
Yep.
Because if you can't project that, it's not going to be taken up. And I personally believe that many people have what I'll call a sixth sense. I don't know whether it's body language, tone of voice, or what, but if you don't believe what you're saying, they know you don't. Well, you know, there's something that both Cheryl and Lynn said that, or I should say implied, that I think ought to be inserted here among the things you can do. And by the way, Cheryl is a superb clinician, and she's the one who thought this one up. What she does is she finds out who the most important person in the client's life is, who's usually younger than them, and preferably a kid, and says, now, you know, in trance, visualize that person being offered their first cigarette. And there'll usually be a look on the person's face of distaste at the idea that of that happening to, let's say, their 7-year-old grandchild. And she then points out that, well, the reason they took that cigarette is you being a negative role model. And then she'll come back and have them visualize same scene if they gave up smoking and were a positive role model. And this has tremendous effect.
That's wonderful.
And it ties in with the very things that Cheryl was emphasizing and that Lynn was emphasizing.
That's really, it's just never ceases to amaze me what can happen in hypnosis, even though Jim and I see people all the time and they have amazing results. We continue to be amazed at those results. It's just awesome. And a lot of what we learned and what we do, we owe to your father. So we have like 1 minute before the next break. And then when we come back, we're only going to have maybe 3 or 4 minutes with you. So Larry, is there anything, let's say we've talked about your dad in history and the things he would do and didn't do. what do you think if he were here today, what would he be doing differently, or would he be doing everything the same? And what would he think about hypnosis and where it's gone as a profession?
Well, he'd be pleased to see it expanding. He'd be disappointed to see that there aren't more physicians using it. Mm-hmm. And he would be encouraging the idea that it should expand to additional areas. I think those would be his major reactions. There are some things that he would be vehement on, either plus or minus, but the major feelings he'd have, I think, are what I've described.
Mm-hmm. Well, we owe him quite a debt, and that's why we wanted to talk to you guys today. It's just I wish that I could have met him. I can't think of anyone who's. I mean, there are people that have had a huge impact on the profession, but Dave Elman is certainly at the very top of that.
So, thank you both for having us.
Oh, we're delighted.
Yes, thank you very much, and have a wonderful time in your travels.
You too. Thank you all for listening.